What's going on YouTube? So this is kind of like a mental health reaction video to Daniel Mackler's videos. Go check out his videos. This point he makes on Psychotherapist is so important because just like everybody's talking about now, we live in a matrix. And I think that goes into what he's talking about in regards to how sometimes clients are more healthy than the psychotherapists themselves. I can talk about this, and Daniel's going to talk about this in his, specific video. Also, he's also a scapegoat of his own family, and he also became a therapist himself. So go check out his channel, subscribe to his channel, and here we go.
I would like to explore a phenomenon that, from what I've seen, is much more common than people realize, and that is when the therapy client is healthier than the therapist. I never knew such a thing existed. I just assumed before I ever went to therapy and before I became a therapist that such a thing was impossible. Naturally, of course, obviously, the therapist is going to be healthier than the client. That's how they help them. Well, it first dawned on me that this wasn't necessarily the case when I started to go to therapy. And I started spending a lot of time, twice a week for quite a while, in therapy. And I started having a lot of conflict with my therapist. And over time, the question started coming into my mind. I'd never heard of such a question before, but it came into my mind. Am I healthier than my therapist? And I couldn't get the thought out of my mind. I even did what I was supposed to do by being so honest in psychotherapy, by talking about it with my psychotherapist. She totally, absolutely, fundamentally denied that such a thing was possible. She just went with the assumption, and she probably even believed it, that no, obviously, Daniel, you're less healthy than I am. I know more about you. I have my stuff more together. Well, as time went on, I thought about it more, and I became a therapist. I listened to so many of my clients talk about their relationships with their past therapists. I had a lot of friends who were in psychotherapy, and I listened to them talk about their relationships with their therapist, and I brought up my idea. And over time, I started to formulate an idea of why it is so common, not always true, but so commonly true, that therapy clients are healthier than their therapists.
Most people will think that you're crazy. Like, for example, when I was first going through my situation where I was dating a narcissist and I figured them out and there was a bunch of drama and then they discarded me and replaced me for somebody else. And then I'm going back to my family, trying to tell my family, but I was being scapegoated. But at the time, my eyes were only open to the fact that I was dating a narcissist or personality disorder individual. And I'm going back to my family and I'm trying to tell them and they trying to suppress what I'm saying. And then they start attacking me personally, saying, I never listened growing up or whatever the case may be, because I was being scapegoated. So once I opened my eyes to the fact that I was the scapegoat, and everything started to click because they talked about me on holidays. I would step out the room and I would hear them say something about me. I've heard my dad say stuff about me just to go with my mom. You know what I'm saying? Just a bunch of malarkey, BS, scapegoating bullcrap. But so after that, I decided to go to my therapist, right? And that's why this guy, his experience resonates with me so much. And like he said, this happens to a lot of people. So I go to talk to my therapist. So I go to the doctor. Mind you, let's run it back. So all the way back in like when I was younger, when I was like 19, 20, you know what I'm saying? I didn't understand why I was so depressed. I was so depressed, like, oh my God, I had so much depression. Listen, I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. I was crying at work. That's how much depression I had. I didn't understand why. And I thought it was because my mom kind of persuaded me not to chase my dreams and not to go to college, play college basketball. And she fake cried because she's a narcissist. And narcissists fake empathy when they want to get their way. So she didn't want me to do that. So I ended up being a depressed 18-year-old going to work at a warehouse with a bunch of 40-year-olds who still live in 1941, and they calling me a colored dude and stuff like that. So I'm just depressed, and I start making music again and stuff like that. So I'm running to my mom because I didn't realize that she was off her rocker. But I'm running to my mom for everything. I'm calling her at work and stuff like that. And she's twisting my mind frame and my beliefs. But this is a person that I care for. So fast forward after all of the situations, dating a narcissist and waking up to my family system. But back then I took medication. I started taking medication for depression. But I kept saying, and this is how, I'm gonna give myself props. This is how much of a defiant person I am. And my family hates that about me. They always say, you never listen, you never blah, 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 because I want to fall in line to their toxic narcissistic beliefs. So I got on medication. I got off myself because I said that I did not want to rely on that. Bang. Then I'm defiant to the medication. Then I'm defiant to my family. You feel me? Give me my props. Give me my props. I'm being real. Because I've minimized myself for these people for years and years and years, for people in general in life. So now I'm trying to build my self-esteem. I've always been confident, but I've always had, stuff on top of me that I felt like I shouldn't be doing this because of that. I shouldn't be doing that. But no, I should be exactly who I am, not who people try to make me out to be and make it to where I have to go on medication because I become so depressed. But anyway, so I got on I got on medication. I forced myself to get off medication. I forced myself to go against my family, and then I get to this therapist after dating this narcissist, figuring out my family situation. I get to this therapist, and I understood the situation way more than he did. So I woke up to my family system, and like I said, I'm a male empath, so I'm upset, I'm crying, I can barely control my emotions because I'm like, oh my God, my partner wasn't who I thought they were, my family not who I think they were. So I go to this doctor, right? In my hometown, I'm at the doctor, and the doctor's trying to, because it's a matrix, like I said, the doctor's trying to persuade me to take more medication. He's like, I guess he get a write-off. I don't know if he get a check or whatever the case may be. He's like, yeah, it's not, I understand you want to stay with medication, but it's not a bad thing. That's why I say, no, I don't want to be on medication. I don't need to be on medication. Right now in my life, I'm not depressed. That cloud I had in my head, that part where I was at work and I feel like crying. Listen, I'm at work now, and they feel like I'm this social butterfly. They feel like I'm such a and I don't feel awkward to talk to nobody. I engage talking to people at work now. And that's how much work I've done on myself without therapy. I shake everybody's hand that comes in my client's house. Sometimes we have 5 different staff members in the client's house. I shake the, hey, how you doing? My name's Josh. Hey, how you doing? Because of the work I did, the work with God that I did, the work with YouTube. Shout out to Daniel Mackler, because a lot of his videos helped me too. Shout out to Elisa Romano. Shout out to Dr. Romney. Shout out to Maria. She's the life coach. I actually know her. Shout out to everybody, that helped me along my journey. But I've done the work, more work on myself, better work than any therapist could ever do. That's why if you're breaking from narcissistic abuse, if you're breaking from being a scapegoat, you can do the work. I'm not saying that it can help everything, but you can heal without therapy. It's all about perspective. The therapist in reality is just the guidance, and so many therapists, like he said in his video, so many therapists are not good or not as healthy as you, or they'll put you in a mental loop where you're sitting here thinking that they know what they're talking about. Listen, my therapist had the nerve to tell me to take 3 weeks away from my narcissist and then go back. Take 3 weeks away. Bro, what type of time are you on?
That therapy clients are healthier than their therapists. The first one actually is very simple. And I have 2 basic areas that I'm going to talk about. Maybe I'll think of some more as the video goes on, but this is the 2 basic areas. The first one is that therapy clients so often are humble. Humble. They're ready to learn. They're willing to grow. They're willing to look at themselves and consider that they might be wrong. That is a very healthy state. That is a state that is healthy and provokes more healthiness, provokes more growth. Whereas being really humble, it's not a common quality in psychotherapists. It should be. A good psychotherapist will inevitably be humble. But most are not. That's what I've observed over time. I've observed quite a lot of therapists, and mostly what I see is they're the opposite of humble. They are arrogant. Now, there are different ways that they can hide it. They can hide it by being professional. They can hide it by using all sorts of fancy language. They can hide it from themselves by being in denial. But so many therapists, perhaps most, are very arrogant. They believe they have the answers, they have the tools, they have the techniques, they have the diagnostic power on their side. They know what to do in every situation. And if they can't help someone, and so much of the time when people have real problems, really open problems, people are really open and emotional about their problems, therapists really don't know what to do. They know how to try to tie up a person's problems and make it seem like it's gone away, but they don't know how to really help them through their problems because most therapists haven't figured out how to help themselves through their own problems. That's what I've observed again and again. And so what the therapist does, if the client absolutely fundamentally remains open and humble and growing, well, the therapist has ways to get rid of them, push them out. If they can't figure out how to push the client's feelings down, make them bury their feelings, perhaps even through pathologizing them, shaming them, breaking them down, hurting them in different ways, perhaps even replicating the very traumas that caused the client to have his or her problems in the first place. If the therapist cannot do that, which they often do, they often succeed at doing this and shutting down the client in the therapy relationship, then they get rid of them. They say, your problems are too serious for me. You need to go see a psychiatrist. You need a higher form of care. Or simply, I just can't work with you. I can't deal with your problems. Or you need medication. You need something more. In other words, you are too fundamentally growth-oriented for me. You are too healthy for me. You cause me too much stress. Actually, what they're really saying, if they could be really fundamentally honest, you are threatening my arrogance too much. You are threatening my facade too much. You are threatening my denial too much. You are too healthy and health-oriented for me. I am too shut down to be able to work with you. I need to get rid of you. The problem is none of this is said out in the open. It's not said using these actual words. The therapist would have to be very, very humble to say these things to the client. So instead, they don't say it. They just blame the client. And so often, because the client is looking for love, looking for acceptance, looking for a caring ear, looking for empathy, sadly underneath it, in a replication of their unresolved traumas, looking for a parental figure, having the fantasy that they finally have found this parental figure. They believe the therapist. They believe that this person knows better, and they feel ashamed, and often they shut down and want to crush their own growth process in order to do what the therapist says is right, even though it is wrong. This is such a common dynamic in psychotherapy, where the therapist is less healthy than the client, and yet the therapist has more power, and so the client actually shuts down and doesn't grow, can shut down their whole growth process sometimes. And what's so sad is the greater mental health system so often says that this is good. They side with the psychotherapist. They say, oh, now that you're more shut down, they don't actually say this, but what they say is, oh, you're actually experiencing fewer symptoms, because often people who are not growing at all, who have pushed all their feelings down, buried everything under a wall of dissociation and denial, well, they don't look like they're as much in despair. This is often the case with people who have a good reaction to psychiatric medication. It makes a lot of their feelings go away. It makes a lot of their despair go away. They become less healthy, but by society's standards, by the mental health system's standards, by the therapist's own standards often, they have fewer symptoms. They have become, on paper, healthier. They are improving. They can have higher functioning sometime. whereas in reality they have become less healthy. They have actually gotten dragged down to the level of the therapist. So the second area actually is kind of related to the first area. This is about the different levels or stages of the healing process.
But do not gaslight yourself. We live in a matrix, so you could be healthier than your therapist. You can do the work on yourself or go to a therapist who is actually qualified. Find some of these, the Lisa Romanas and stuff like that. I know a lot of their stuff is expensive. I wanted to add a lot of their stuff is expensive, but these people, a lot of the life coaches online, be careful who you go to, but a lot of them have specifically been through these situations themselves so they can help you through it versus a therapist that you go through that just went to school, read a couple books, and they're not really knowledgeable or don't have any experience on a specific situation. Or, oh my God, Shrink for Men. Look up Shrink for Men. So Shrink for Men is a YouTube channel by this lady. I've actually done a FaceTime call with her, like a therapy session, and she's very knowledgeable on dating narcissists, borderlines, everything. Like when I was first going through my thing, when I was first going through my situation, I went to a lot of different people, but she's a very solid option, especially for men dealing with these individuals, and she keep it raw, or you could just watch her YouTube videos and you can learn from that as well. Dealt with personality disorder individuals, please look up Shroom for Men because I had a long hour conversation with her. She's dope as hell. Oh my God, it's another guy that I forget his name, but like I said, we live in a matrix, so be very careful who you get help from, no matter what their title is. Go check out Daniel Mackler. It's your boy Josh Different, mind, body, and soul. I'm different, you different, we different. Subscribe to the channel, baby.